You are greatly beloved. For God Himself to come and search the earth for us.
Let's have a round of applause for the messenger of Allah.
You are greatly beloved. For God Himself to come and search the earth for us.
Let's have a round of applause for the messenger of Allah.
Everywhere you hear Him, listen to Him. Everywhere you see Him, look at Him. Everywhere He advised you to go, go. Everywhere He advised you to stay from, stay from. So we are thankful to Allah for this great helper of mine, Minister Farrakhan. And I say continue to hear our Minister Farrakhan.
So those of you who thought you would come out here to see a weak, fragile, decrepit Farrakhan, I want you to look again. I'm here and I'm strong and I will look down on all of my enemies, for He promised me that sit thou at my right hand while I make all your enemies your footstool.
We got the wrong person up there, but in the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful, I would like to greet all of you in the greeting words of peace. We say them in the Arabic language of Assalamu alaikum, but in English, that simply is a prayer of peace be upon you. And we are not with our student minister today, but he may be joining the program later on today. But we have a special guest on today who is going to go in depth with us on the history of the final call. And our subject today is why we must defend the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan in this hour. So with that, I want to introduce and bring on our beloved brother. He is the Final Call editor-in-chief, and he co-hosts Straight Words from Brother Nabaa Muhammad, and I will bring him on. Let's see here. There we go. Assalamu alaikum, my brother.
Wa alaikum salam, sir. How are you, Brother Stephen?
I'm doing well. Praise be to Allah. And how about yourself, my brother? How are you doing today?
We thank Allah for life, and we especially thank Him for the opportunity to bear witness and to defend a man who has been working for Black people been longer than I have been alive, and I'm 62. So thank you, brother, for inviting me on to talk about this serious subject.
Yes, sir. Thank you. So let's go ahead. We'll start it off a little light. Let's talk about that wonderful, powerful program that you do on WVON. Your program comes on iHeart Radio Tuesday at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Tell us a little bit about that program.
Well, thank you. It's Straight Words with Nabaa, Richard Muhammad, and BJ Murphy. And we come on every Tuesday at 9 p.m. That's Central Time. 9 p.m. Central, we're on. So if you're in the Chicagoland area, you can get it at WVON AM 1690 Old School Radio. You can also get it on the iHeart Radio app, WVON.com, and you can get the program on the WVON 1690 Facebook page. So that's Tuesday nights, 9 p.m. to midnight Central Standard Time. Our first hour, inshallah, we're going to deal with the tragedy in Jacksonville and what is happening with these all-out assaults on Black people. So that's one.
Right.
Our second hour, we're going to talk to some Muslim entrepreneurs and businessmen who do business.
All
Don't just
right.
think about it. And their efforts to revitalize certain blocks of Chicago. Very proud of their work. Last, we're going to close with Brother Jerron Muhammad out of Philly. And we're going to talk about Joe Sertain, who passed. This was the brother who was integral to the success of the Million Man March, in particular, coming out of Philadelphia. Brother Jerron will also talk to us about something of what's happening in the Sudan. So that's Tuesday nights, every Tuesday, 9
All
p.m. to
right.
midnight Central Standard Time. And also,
And
if you
it's
go to straightwords.com, you can get program information and you can get our archive shows. We're running a little behind, but inshallah, we'll catch up and have all the episodes up.
yes, sir. Yes, sir. And I know I love the articles by Brother Jaron. I hope I'm pronouncing that right, because I love to understand what's going on an international level. And I think that we're so deceived here in America about what is going on actually on an international level, particularly when it comes down to Africa and the role of AFRICOM, the role of China and things like that. So is it an interactive program?
It is interactive. You can call us and you can, we give you a call-in number,
Okay.
773-591-1690. And you can also kind of interact with us via the Facebook page for WVON. But we take callers. We really would encourage everybody to tune in and call in tomorrow because we really like to make this a serious discussion.
Absolutely.
Slaughter
Absolutely.
of our
So
people.
let's get right on into our subject today. We're going to first start off this first part, talking about the history a little bit, getting into the Final Call newspaper, and then we want everyone who's watching, this is an interactive program as well. So if you have any type of questions or anything like that, you can write them in the chat, and we're going to also give out the link if you want to come on live and ask your questions. So I'll go ahead and start it off. And how did the Messenger the first newspaper, the Final Call to Islam, contribute to the mission after Master Farad Muhammad's departure?
Well, I'm not up to speed, if you will, on the history of the Final Call to Islam because I only found out about that some years later.
Okay.
That there even was a paper called the Final Call to Islam. But to me, it is an example of the need to define yourself.
Right.
The need to bring us into development as a literate people, seeking knowledge as opposed to conjecture, and
Right.
seeking truth as opposed to slander. Because in that period of time, newspapers were not what they are today. And of course, many newspapers have closed their print editions and some have gone out of business all together. But there were papers founded by different ethnic groups that not only provided information, but they helped members of their community move into the broader society. So you think about the great Chicago Defender and its history, and others as our people made the great migrations from the south to the north. Many times these publications would explain the new social milieu and would help to get them to understand life in the city, how to be successful, what to watch out for, the social mores and such. So you can imagine a paper that's called The Final Call to Islam is about bringing our people out of darkness into light, but clearly in a way that we are defining and presenting and even defending our faith and ourselves, not counting on other people to do that.
Right. And, when we look at the final call to Islam, a lot of people thought that the first publication was called Muhammad Speaks, but it was actually the final call to Islam. So when the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan reestablished the final call newspaper, a lot of people thought that he was changing it, but in all actuality, he was bringing it back to its original name.
And one of the other things I've heard the minister say, when the Honorable Elijah Muhammad departed in 1975, and the minister began to rebuild his work, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad's work, and rebuild the nation, I remember hearing him say there were too many Muhammads speaking, because many were claiming that mantle to that great revolutionary, impactful, powerful newspaper called Muhammad Speaks. So with the final call, he was able to differentiate himself and his path to rebuilding the work. And we see today, I guess a little over 40 years now later, we see the final call. I think no one can argue as the strongest, most definitive defender and representative of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, right, because we are under the leadership of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. And so the next question is, it says, can you elaborate on the significance and impact of the final call to Islam? I mean, I know you said a little bit, but at that time in the 30s and 40s, like you said, I think that the messenger was putting his articles in the Pittsburgh Courier.
Yes.
So can you talk a little bit about that, the significance of establishing it for the Nation of Islam to propagate the teachings of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad?
To me, brother, I look at the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, of course, as a divinely guided man, but as a practical man. So he was able, through the Pittsburgh Courier, which was an established publication, and others, the key was to get the word to the people. And I don't recall if the Pittsburgh Courier articles were later, after the final call to Islam. I think they were after. But the Muslims, and there were others, there were papers, there was a paper, and I know in New York, and others that carried the columns of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, not just the Pittsburgh Courier. And they carried it under different names at times. But the Muslims, again, were so strong in their faith that they took those black newspapers, primarily weeklies, and distributed them to our people so that our people would get the message. So we come from a long line of brothers and sisters who sacrificed and who had a commitment to enlightening our people. Not just a word spoken, but a commitment, boots on the ground, interacting with people at times when it was not popular.
Right.
Later, we get the great Muhammad Speaks, which at its peak sells 1 million copies a week. And it helps to fuel the nation. But that newspaper was carried on the backs of the FOI, under the direction of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and great editors like John Woodford, and later Charles 67X, who was our first Muslim editor-in-chief. And of course, he later became known as Askia Muhammad was one of the early editors of the Final Call when it came into existence in 1979 as the minister was rebuilding. But it's a great history.
Right.
And it really established this tradition, this bold tradition, and this very strategic tradition. Because I don't ever want us to misunderstand the mission and what the brothers do every time they go out with those with the paper.
Right.
When you get into organizing, whether it's political organizing or community organizing, when you get into what they call hardcore organizing, you meet people in their homes.
Right.
And you go door to door and you learn their political concerns and their social concerns. And then as you decide how you're going to move to empower the community or to make a candidate successful, it's based on that hardcore, hand-to-hand, face-to-face contact. So this is something that I think Master Fard Muhammad obviously clearly understood. And now we see most often when we show up, our people greet us like long lost friends.
That's
We're
right.
not strangers. Because
That's
the
right.
time has led to greater acceptance and greater understanding of what we do. But we can never take for granted those who don't know. So our effort must always be to reach those who don't know, as we didn't know at one point. But somebody did something that allowed us to see the light and walk therein.
Yes, sir. Beautiful. Now I'm showing the FOI out in the street, taking the final call door to door. Can you tell us the significance of the FOI going out into the community with the final call in hand?
Well, it puts you right where the action is, so to speak. It puts you right where your people are. And very often, brothers are going back to neighborhoods that they came out of. But you're going back a changed man. You're going back not a man who feels he's better, but a man who feels he has something of value. And he comes, as the minister said in the meaning of FOI, like little saviors to deliver this word: sharp, clean, dressed for business, in the modern suit, in the modern wear, business wear of American society and Western society. So we come giving our people an image that I think today more and more of our people appreciate, because the image of the black man and the black male has so deteriorated as American society has deteriorated. So you get this very sharp, clean-cut, serious image of a black man who comes as a servant, and he's unafraid. Places where others won't go, we go. Having conversations with those who sometimes say, don't even come over here. Well, thank you, brother, for the invitation, because here we come. Right. But we come with peace, we come with love, we come with respect. And that work and that continued work, I think it is earning us and has earned us the love of our people. And we pray that it is earning us the blessings and the love and the backing of Almighty God, Allah, and His Christ. And we certainly want to please our beloved minister, the man whose voice most of us heard or saw or read. But we had an encounter with this man, and it changed our lives. So now we go back into the lives, into the homes, into the reality of our people to try to help them change their lives by Allah's permission.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. And you talked a little bit on Brother Askia, and I wanted to just put this picture up here. Can you talk a little bit about these brothers and sister that were very instrumental in establishing Final Call in here in the hills of North America?
Well, I'm going to start with the great Abdul Wali Muhammad. Even though Brother Askia and the Brother Abdul Allah were early editors of the Final Call, and Brother Askia and Brother Abdul Allah Muhammad were also integral to the development of the Muhammad Speaks, right?
Mm-hmm.
But Brother Wali was the visionary who wanted to make what the minister saw potentially in the paper a reality. So he came into the Nation of Islam in D.C. His father was the great civil rights era journalist, Simeon Booker Jr., wrote for Jet magazine, detailed many of the horrors of the civil rights movement in the South at that time. Brother Wali was hard charging. He was demanding. He was not well liked by everyone because he just had a way.
Right.
And it was his way or the highway, but he was devoted to making. And his name, of course, Abdul Wali, means the protecting friend. And I remember when the minister talked about giving him that name. And he said he gave him that name because he was his friend, not in the sense of your friend gives you $1 because you need $1.
Right.
But he was his friend because he would protect his interests. So Brother Wali inspired me. And he inspired Brother James G. Muhammad, who after Brother Wali unfortunately passed in 1991, we were still building this institution called the Final Call. And it was really very painful loss.
Yes, sir. Absolutely.
For many years, I could not even speak of Brother Wali without literally crying. And he died under rather kind of mysterious circumstances.
Right.
At a health club in Illinois. At the time of his death, I was living and working in Washington, D.C.
Okay.
I was the East Coast correspondent for the Final Call and had opened our little office in the District of Columbia. And, you know, brother, after about a year of coming back and forth after Brother Wali's death, I was asked if I would come to Chicago to help Brother James G. Muhammad, who became editor. And Brother James was another great, hardworking, sincere, dedicated, competent, brilliant. He was a photographer, a writer. He could do layout and design. I remember we went with James G. Muhammad, James G. I'm talking about now. Right. I remember once we went to the press and there was something wrong about how the papers were being bound. We didn't like that it was kind of too tight and it seemed to be cutting into the papers. Brother James watched the man on the binding machine. Then basically respectfully asked the man to step aside, and he adjusted the machine himself until it got to where it needed to be to ensure that no brother received any paper that was damaged. Brother James went on world friendship tours with the minister, as did Brother Askia, who became our White House correspondent at one point. Then he became our senior editor. Brother Wali also traveled internationally with the minister, accompanying him to places like Libya. At a certain point when Brother James was editor, I stepped away from the Final Call to try to do some things to earn a bit more income to support my family, but I still contributed.
Yes, sir.
During my absence, Brother James was eventually replaced by Sister Dora as managing editor, and she ran the paper on a day to day basis as a sister. Worked very hard, very consistent, got the paper out. Sister Dora left, and Brother Abdul Arif Muhammad, who was the general counsel for the Nation of Islam, came on as editor in chief. At a
Mhm.
certain point, he invited me to come back
Okay.
to help him, which I did. And at a certain point, at that point, I was running my own media consulting business and doing very well.
Yes.
But, I was being called to that which I loved. So,
Yes, sir.
excuse me.
No
So I
problem.
came back and to help my brother. Eventually, he left the final call and turned it over to me. So for about the last 15 years, roughly 14, 15 years, I've been editor in chief. And of course, when I came back, the first thing I did was tell Brother James, come on back.
That's
Solo.
right.
So essentially, the whole time I've been editor, Brother James G. Muhammad has been a contributing editor. So he
Okay.
still works on the paper essentially every single week, integral to the training of the staff, integral to decisions we make about how we're going to cover, what we're going to cover. Very, very talented brother. As a matter of fact, the radio show, which is Straight Words with Nabaa, Richard Muhammad, and B.J. Murphy. B.J. Murphy is a radio Hall of Fame broadcaster. He's my
Mhm.
co-host. But
Okay.
but the brother who's in there every week with us is Brother James G. Muhammad.
All
So
right.
we keep the team together so we can keep winning.
Yes, sir. So we know that the first final call was written by the minister. I mean,
Yeah.
the whole thing written
Yes.
by the minister. And I think I got a picture of the first one. And correct
Yeah.
me if I'm wrong. If you can see that image, it was the ultimate challenge, the survival of the Black nation. And
Yeah.
then I believe after that one, we had the one why, and you see a Black man being crucified on a cross that is implanted in the middle of the United States of America, and I think three heads, and it's an Arab, I think a Black man and a white man in that image. What was the key developments that led to the Final Call newspaper moving from its basement office in the minister's home to the new location on West 79th Street in Chicago in 1982?
Well, the of course the minister uh paid for the equipment for the final call.
Yes,
When we
sir.
moved on 79th Street, there was a building that we owned that isn't there anymore on 79th Street in Halsted. It was right on the corner. It's since been demolished. But that was our home. And not the final call administration building as such.
Hmm.
We moved into the final call administration building after we got back the mosque and school on
Okay.
Stony Island Avenue
Mm.
because the minister had called the first permanent home for his ministry in the rebuilding effort the final call building or the final call administration building. But he always referred to the mosque as the building, as the mosque on Stony Island. So when we got that back, we moved into our new home
Okay. Yes,
where we
sir.
still remain to this day.
Beautiful. And how did the origin of the Final Call online edition tie into the Nation of Islam's involvement of the Million Man March in 1995, and what was its initial purpose?
Well, I mean, of course, in 95, you're talking about a very, how can I put it,
Pivotal.
much less developed,
Okay.
but it was cutting edge. And so, since we're taught to be right down to the modern times, there were things that were being done to bring us. And Brother Wali was a great believer in technology. So this was part of the continued evolution of the Final Call as an institution. The Final Call didn't always publish every week.
Mm-hmm.
At one point, we were bi-weekly. Before that, we were more intermittent. We got the paper out kind of when we could. But thanks to the hard work of Abdul Wali Muhammad, thanks to the hard work of James G. Muhammad in particular, we went bi-weekly. And under Brother James G. Muhammad as editor, we went weekly.
Mm.
And all of the brothers and sisters who worked for, contributed to, supported the Final Call, worked for us in any way, are all part of that divine wheat that allowed us to continue to grow to where we are.
Mm-hmm.
The great work of the FOI through the pandemic. We have not gone backwards. We've gone forward. And so our commitment to truth, our commitment to being bold,
Right.
the minister's exhortation that we go after that like a watchman on the wall, alerting our people to the enemy and the enemies and the threats that are out there, defining the nation, defining pivotal points in the history of the nation. But not just pivotal points in the history of the nation, but pivotal points in the history of Black newspapers.
Mm.
Of the Black community. During the time of the urban peace movement in the 80s and 90s, we were right there. When there were these urban peace summits across the country, when there was the Bloods and Crips coming together to form a truce over rivers of blood, as the minister talked about. We told those stories. We told the story of the minister and his work around the country. We defended him and defined him. And the brothers in particular took that truth around the country, and we told the story of our people,
Right.
their struggle and their threats, and our accomplishments. So we're now over 40 years old as a publication and institution. But it's been 40 years of hard, dedicated, principled work.
Absolutely.
This is not a work that just happens because you wish it. So we're grateful for all of those who have worked with us and helped to bring us to where we are today as we try to seek where we will be tomorrow.
Beautiful. And so we'll go on into the second part, defending the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. And we're going to be joined by student minister Donell Muhammad, who was able to join us. Praise be to Allah.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum
Walaikum
salam.
salam. Oh,
How
on,
are you doing, my brother?
I'm doing fine, sir. How are you?
I am doing fine by Allah's grace. Thank you for honoring us with your presence. Thank you for your service. Thank you for your dedication. Thank you for all of the things I heard as I was getting on, because most certainly you have brought the Final Call to another level.
Well, praise be to Allah, brother. Thank you for the invitation.
Yes,
and
sir.
frankly, we're glad to be part of that chain.
All
That
praise
immutable
due to
chain
Allah.
of work and effort and dedication of the believers. the workers, the writers, the photographers, and I mean, we've had great committed people over the years.
Yes, sir.
And this is what the minister's leadership inspires and what it gives us an opportunity to develop our gifts.
Yes, sir.
So we've been very privileged to work with people over the years and have their gifts developed, as I've been able to work with the paper over the years and have my gift developed. I'm not perfect now, and I certainly was not perfect when I started.
Yes, sir.
But I had a chance to practice the labor, and I had the commitment to being obedient to my teachers,
Yes, sir.
those who are in authority over me.
Yes, sir.
And when I worked under Brother James G. Muhammad, one of the best times of my life, and I was totally committed to protecting him in every way possible after the death of Brother Wali in 1991.
Yes, sir.
And, you know, when you enjoy to serve where you are, it's a blessing.
Yes, sir.
Yes, it is.
When you see a man that the minister has chosen and you choose to back the man that the minister has chosen, you're doing the right thing.
That's correct.
And every time you work sincerely to serve that man, you don't know what you're doing for yourself.
Exactly.
And that the way that
Exactly.
you serve him by Allah's permission becomes the way that others will serve you.
Praise be to
You set
Allah.
a pattern. And so I loved Brother Wali, was devastated by his loss.
His
I
murder.
loved
Yes, sir.
Brother James and was determined that we would not lose him
Yes, sir.
as best I could do on my watch.
Yes, sir.
And after me serving him, it turned around, and when I was blessed to become editor, I called my brother, and he so graciously agreed to come back, I guess you could say, to serve me, but really to serve in the mission,
Right.
to
Right.
be respected in the house that he helped build.
Right.
Yes, sir.
Right.
See, there's something about respecting those that go before you.
Right. Right.
It doesn't matter if they are imperfect. We're not perfect.
Right.
Right.
But when you show regard for those that built something that you didn't originate,
Right. Right.
you're setting a pattern, and you're getting people to understand the importance of institution
Right.
and institution building. And believe it or not, I believe you're laying a foundation perhaps for how you may be treated later on.
Ain't
There
no
you
doubt
go.
about it.
You know,
What go
but
around, come around. You
hey,
reap what you
and
sow.
it's beautiful when you can look, like when I look and see my brother James G. Muhammad by my side. We're like twin bows shot, or twin arrows shot from a single bow.
That's right.
That man loves the minister.
Yes, sir.
That man sacrificed for the minister.
Yes, sir.
I saw him.
Yes, sir.
I would be less than a Muslim and a brother than to not give him all the respect that he has earned
Yes, sir.
as he continues to labor. So, and my helping
Yes,
him
sir.
has only helped him help me. So praise be to Allah.
Praise be to Allah. I
Hey,
saw
he
him
who
on the
exalts himself shall
okay.
be humbled. And he who humbles himself shall be exalted. Yes, sir.
All right now.
I saw him on the program this morning too. They flashed him up there real quick.
Okay.
So to get into the second part, and student minister, did you want to start that off on defending why we must defend the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan in this hour?
Sure.
Yes, sir.
The first thing I would like to say, of course, in the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful, I bear witness that there is no God but Allah, and Muhammad is his servant and messenger. In the line and the spirit that Brother Nabaa has already sent forth, I feel I'm on an elevated plane as I ride into this conversation. I'm already at the top level of spirit and energy. The reason why we must defend and ultimately go on the offensive is because no war can be won by simply defending. When you're always in the defensive mode, that means the enemy is bringing it to you. At some point, you must take the stand, secure the enemy in your defense, and then go on the offensive and begin to push the enemy back.
Right.
For those of us that have had any kind of experience with the martial arts, yes, it is a design for self-defense, but no battle, once it starts, can you defeat an opponent if you're always backing up and defending. At some point, you must throw some blows back and not just be blocking blows, or you will never win the fight.
That's right.
So why we must defend and then go on the offensive in that defense is because if we don't, the messenger said of us, lift me up and I will bring all men unto me, or the Jesus said, lift me up and I will bring all men unto me. We must remove the slander, the filth, and the prison of propaganda that the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan said that this world, and particularly the synagogue of Satan, has put him in. We must bring him up out of the propaganda prison that our enemies have put upon him, and following in the line or the slogan that Brother Dimitri them helped put together in one of the final calls, we are Farrakhan. Well, if we are Farrakhan, then we should all be sounding like him, quoting his words that he got directly from God himself. And in so doing, if all of us are him and we are speaking the way he speaks, using the language he uses, then as he puts his enemies aside, as he eliminates his enemies, we too will be given the power by Allah to do the same in every area that we live in. And pretty soon, the only thing that will be left is Farrakhan is the man of God in this hour. He was personally chosen by God through his Christ, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. He is the Messiah. He is the Jesus on scene today. And we must go forth with that and move from discipleship into that term called the apostles of Christ.
Powerful. Yes, sir. So I'll go ahead and start this first question, Brother Nabaa. I wanted to ask you, after the Million Man March, the mainstream did a whiteout of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. Can you talk a little bit about that? I mean, because before the Million Man March, they were trying their best to put out false propaganda to dissuade people from going to the mall in Washington, D.C. So can you talk a little bit about that occurrence after the Million Man March?
Well, I think certainly, brother, not just after, but in the lead up to the Million Man March in 1995. The genesis for the Million Man March was actually 1993, the 30th anniversary of the March on Washington, and they just observed the 60th anniversary this weekend in Washington, D.C. To make a long story short, the minister was invited to speak at the 30th anniversary, 1993. He was unceremoniously disinvited, largely by Rabbi Michael Lerner of a magazine called Tikkun and others. And they tried to connect our brother, who's now running for president, under the independent label.
Cornell West.
Cornell West.
Yes, sir.
But the beautiful thing is, and I recall because I was writing about this attack, it became a really heated thing in Black America. The inviting and disinviting of Farrakhan. And I talked to an activist and I asked him some questions about Dr. West. He said, no, that doesn't sound like Cornell. You might want to call him. And since we always try to talk to people instead of talking about people, I was blessed to talk to Dr. West. He said, I have no doubt about the minister's role basically as the champion of the hurt of our people. I just have some concern about how he, in essence, words, deals with our Jewish brothers and sisters. Well, that's a long way from Farrakhan hates people.
Right.
Right? So that writing that I did, by Allah's grace, it helped to open a door for discussion between the minister and Dr. West. Eventually, there was a meeting of the Congressional Black Caucus. And during that meeting of the Congressional Black Caucus, this came up. And then there was, of course, the NAACP, led by, at that point, Brother Ben Chavis, was involved. So basically, coming out of that Congressional Black Caucus weekend was a pledge from Black leaders that they would not be divided, that they would have no permanent friends, but only permanent interests for our people. And anyway, the minister at a certain point, he talks about wanting to bring 1 million men to Washington, D.C. He doesn't have any money. It's just a thought. And he asked the question, basically, how many of you would go with me? The men roar their approval. He goes on a tear around the country. The major Black churches do not support him. The major Black organizations do not support him. As a matter of fact, the leader of the National Black Baptist Convention comes out against him. Black pastors and organizations in Chicago, the big time ones, refuse. The minister says to us, go get the people and the leaders will come. But there were the quote unquote little Black pastors, like the Reverend James Demas here in Chicago, the Reverend Al Sampson here in Chicago, people like Dr. Conrad Worrell, the late chairman of the National Black United Front. And there were these kinds of people all over the country. And the minister kept working. He kept having these meetings called Naba'as, or the big showdown. Anyway, the work kept going. But I remember reading, brother, the minister was mocked. It was said there's no way he can be successful. Because to have 1 million Black men in Washington, D.C. would mean that 1 out of every 11 Black men in America would have to be at the same place at the same time. And that they decided was virtually impossible. So when a minister pulled off the impossible,
yes,
though many people spoke that day, because he's so magnanimous with his love, even those who opposed the march spoke that day. That day. Certainly after that, before that, there had been basically having the minister kind of come and debate, if you will, or be interviewed or questioned by leading journalists and leading thought makers and such. And the minister just every time, by Allah's grace,
right,
delivered such incredible messages with such a level of civilization,
Right.
control, lack of emotion, even showing sensitivity to Caucasian people. He delivered the truth in such a magnificent way that instead of the exposure hurting him, it helped him.
Right.
And people like
Absolutely.
myself, this is before the march. One of the main reasons I'm in the nation is because they attacked the minister so hard. I said, well, what is it about this man that they're attacking him like this? Let me go find out for myself. So to make a long story short, at a certain point after the Million Man March, one, whites courted black churches. Two, the federal government introduced a faith-based initiative that came.
Sure did.
Three, now there began the media whiteout and not showing Farrakhan. And that has continued for some time. It used to be you would hear the man speak. Now you don't even hear him speak. As
Right.
much as they can stop him. They tell
So,
you what he
yeah.
said, and then they condemn their false version of what they say he said.
Right.
Right. So then after that, we have the internet coming into play. But of course, in 2019, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, along with Alex Jones and some others, were banned from Facebook and Instagram because Facebook owns Instagram. There was a blanket ban, if you will. Can you talk a little bit about that and the great work that that was done by the believers to keep the minister
We'll see
in the forefront?
with the advent of social media, access is no longer limited to major outlets.
Mm-hmm.
Now you can speak directly to millions potentially of people.
Right.
The minister started to doing Brother Jesse, used to be Brother Jesse. I can't think of his name now.
Kiam.
Yeah, Kiam, Abdul Kiam. People begin to, in a sense, be able to hear the minister and discuss him and decide who he was for themselves.
Right.
And that, became so that silencing of him, along with the lies of the ADL, the lies of the Southern Poverty Law Center,
Right.
the weakness of Negroes, some of whom the minister has defended and helped. But instead of standing and saying simply, that's not the man that I know, or let me talk to him, or let me listen. See, this is why I've been contending we must defend this man.
Yes, sir.
Because they want to back everybody down into a corner.
Right.
It used to be where they said the alleged anti-Semite, the reputed anti-Semite. Now it's
you're convicted. You're guilty.
Yeah, now it's the notorious anti-Semite, huh? But we cannot allow that.
Right.
We know him. This man has never been arrested for as little as spitting on a sidewalk.
Right.
And what I want us to see from my little vantage point, you just had black people slaughtered in Jacksonville, Florida, based on what they say is hatred. I want us to see they are trying to equate our man with that level of madness and murder.
Right.
They're not content with just slandering him. They want to try to blame him in some way.
Right.
But yet in over 40 years of ministry, no acts of violence against members of the Jewish community.
Right.
None of the property of Jewish people threatened. None of the rights of Jewish people abridged. But because you hate the truth that this man speaks, because you hate him exposing you, you hate the fact that at 80 years old, he went into the streets at 80 years old now.
Come on.
And led the FOI into the streets to try to bring peace. We didn't bring the chaos to the streets, but this man did that.
Right.
I watched him. I saw him embrace people. He didn't say, "You too dirty for me to embrace. Do you know who I am?" He embraced them, hugged them. People cried and wept because who cares enough about black people to go where we are to see how we're doing?
Right.
So as the FOI went into the communities with the newspapers, where did the minister go? He went right back in the hood. And he embraced our people and he comforted them. See, this is what we know and this is what we must say. We can't be afraid because ultimately they want it like it is today, where if you say anything, if you just say the name Farrakhan,
Right.
now you are to be punished. No. This man is too valuable. The truth he brings is too powerful. The need of our people is too great. Every time they put lies and cover this man, it leads to tragedy among us. So we don't worship Farrakhan, but we understand his value.
Right. Right.
And we love him. And he loves our people. And we know to have an encounter with him and the body of knowledge that he represents, the wisdom that he dispenses, what he inspires in us. Our people need that today like no other time. In a country that's more and more anti-black, in a country that's more and more unrepentant and it's evil. They don't even want to talk about it anymore, let alone do anything about it. So since we know the truth, we should be bold enough to stand up and tell the truth and do all that we can to back this enemy up. And as Brother Minister Donell said, go on the offensive to not only defend, go on the offensive, not only to defend, but to properly define who this man is, what his work is, and why he's so valuable today.
So those who are attacking, we want to see if we can draw some of them out. So what role does the ADL, the Anti-Defamation League, and the Southern Poverty Law Center, what role do they play in this conspiracy of silence, of whiting out the minister, and of labeling the minister anti-Semitic, homophobic, and so forth and so on? All these negative, labels that they want to dump on the minister, and why?
Yeah.
Well, they're not. It's not a conspiracy of silence.
Go ahead.
It's a conspiracy of a lot of noise. There has absolutely no truth in it.
Yeah, and I was going to say, Brother Donell, thank you. It's not a silence. It is an overwhelming cacophony of telling the big lie.
Right.
And using every tool to reinforce that lie. So the fight with the ADL, and many of our people don't even know. It begins in 1984.
Right.
So you got people, listen to what I'm saying. It begins in 1984, where Reverend Jackson is running for president. He's running for president. He makes, first of all, he wants a balanced U.S. policy. And we don't need to show the ADL words, brother. Right. People can get that garbage somewhere else. But we need to go to the final call and show the minister's words.
Right.
But anyway, 84. Reverend Jackson's running for president. It's monumental. He's exciting the black masses. He's talking about a different vision for America, including American foreign policy. And he makes the mistake, if you will, of being honest and genuine and a true humanitarian. And he says we need a balance. The U.S. needs a balanced policy in the Middle East. He says that the Palestinians and Israel deserve justice. And he wants to build a bridge by changing policy so that the war and the destruction of Palestinian lives and this battle between, it's not even a fair fight between the Palestinians and the Israelis, can end.
Right.
They don't want to hear that, brother. So they run ads like "Ruin Jesse, Ruin."
Right.
As Blacks was saying, "Run Jesse, run." Listen to that. Death threats against Reverend Jackson, so that the minister had the fruit of Islam defend him. Anyway, very heated atmosphere.
Right.
Reverend Jackson makes a mistake before going into New York, a major place for Jewish power and influence, of referring to New York as Hymietown.
Right.
Right. It's already on fire.
Right.
They use that now to attack him. The minister comes out and says very simply, really passionate, that Black people are tired of feeding their leaders to white people like raw meat animals. So listen to his words. He didn't say Jewish people. He said white people. Because the attacks on Reverend Jackson were so vicious. So if he was so anti-Jewish, why didn't he refer specifically to Jewish people?
Right.
Well, after he defends Reverend Jackson, and he calls for dialogue.
Mm-hmm.
He says, now this is Reverend Jackson, one of his headquarters was bombed. This you had the Jewish Defense Organization, a militant, violent Jewish group. This was a serious time.
Right.
There wasn't no time to be playing. So the minister, fearing for Reverend Jackson's life and refusing to allow his brother to be harmed, says that, and then he says basically, if you have a problem with Reverend Jackson, sit down and dialogue with him. He says perhaps our interests, Jewish people and Black people, were aligned at one time, but now maybe we're coming to a different point in our development, and maybe our interests are diverging. Very intelligent, very thoughtful.
Right.
The minister is called by the ADL, Nathan Perlmutter, and I think Nate Hentoff of the Village Voice in New York.
Right.
He is called the new Black Hitler. How dare you?
Mm.
Because you don't like what this man said about policy and how to handle Black leaders. Now you want to connect him with a mass murderer?
Right.
If you go back to one of the things the minister said early on at that time, he said, don't compare me to your wicked murderers.
That's right.
And since that time, the ADL has continued this.
Right.
And continued to pummel, and it's been joined by the American Jewish Committee and others. The Southern Poverty Law Center is part of the same group, and they have continued to pressure, mystify, lie, misrepresent, take things out of context to try to break the minister so that people will not listen, so that these contradictions and these wrongs that need to be righted will not be pointed out.
Right.
And they bully others into falling in line behind them. So that's all the way. How many people know that history today?
Right. Not
Very
many.
few. Very few.
Many. All we know is we just keep hearing about Farrakhan and the Jews.
Right.
And can you talk about the control or the influence, if you will, that they have over mainstream media? Because they use them as their tool.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
We already know, brother, that there's media bias in this country. We know that, number one. These are people who are organized and who have influence. And they are not afraid to use their organization and their influence and their money to achieve their aims.
Right.
So if a news organization today would try to be fair about the minister, that organization would be attacked. So they're all kind of cowed by what they see as this flood that they cannot survive. But the minister's still here.
Right.
He's still strong. My contention is, but where are we? Not where is he?
Right.
And if we know the truth of this man, if this man has made us better men, made us better husbands or husbands for the first time, because if not for his influence, we wasn't marrying nobody.
Right.
That's right.
Made us better fathers, better grandfathers, better figures in our community. Men who are now trying to uplift rather than destroy. Why is that so threatening to you?
Right. Good question.
And why is it so imperative that this man be destroyed? One of the things I say is they hate Farrakhan because he loves us.
That's exactly right. It's exactly right.
See, they hate the good shepherd because the wolf wants to dine deliciously on the sheep.
Right.
And we're like little sheep.
And the good shepherd is blocking that. Yes, sir.
The good shepherd's blocking it.
So
Since they take our money, they take our talents, they move us around in neighborhoods.
Yes, sir.
They benefit from us.
Yes, sir.
And ultimately they move to destroy us.
Yes, sir.
They have no good plan for us. When the last time they showed you a plan that's good for black people? They say we gave y'all Negroes too much already. We want back.
Right. That's the attitude. That's the attitude.
Because the table is tilted now.
Yes, sir.
I read something where you had a white man say the most oppressed person in America is the white man.
Right. And they got an actual organization out for white men.
Talking about Trump and a two-tier system of justice. Stop with the lies, man. We live in a two-tier system of justice.
Right.
They have given Trump everything they could give him because they fear him and his followers. So I think if they are so fearful of lies, why don't we be stronger in our representation of truth?
Absolutely. And so I want to ask you now about the banning of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan by the United Kingdom in 1986. And this goes to show you the fear that they have of the words that come out of the minister's mouth. Can you talk a little bit about that? And do you know, well, go right ahead and say something about that.
No, brother, this one of the miracles of the Nation of Islam. We have a community in London and throughout Europe of those who have declared themselves to be followers of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. Right now, our European region is headed by Brother Abdul Hakim Muhammad, based in London.
That's right.
They started, brother, from videotapes.
Right.
And audio tapes.
Right.
And they came to Savior's Day one year and they looked so good. You couldn't tell that they never heard Farrakhan in person.
Right.
Huh?
That's right.
There was nobody sent over there to raise them.
Right.
They looked and they modeled themselves. And then they came and presented themselves. So this banning of the minister goes back again. We know, one, that America and England are best buddies.
Right.
So if America says we don't want them, England say, okay, we don't want them either.
Right.
And these same lies being spread led to him being declared persona non grata in the UK.
Right.
But it's too late, brother, because he's already there.
Right.
Got a community of believers coming up right there.
Right.
Brothers in suits and bow ties selling the final call.
Right.
On the streets of London, Paris, and other cities. It's not where we want it to be yet. But we're there. And I think the brother, I'm trying to remember, Brother Hakeem, I believe, won a victory in that case. I'm not quite sure what it. I don't recall what it means,
Right.
but it was kind of a step toward the unbanning of
Right, right.
the minister
They,
because there was a Emancipation Day, which is a big day in the UK,
right.
and the minister was supposed to come in by a satellite feed, and they denied it. And I think that's the case that Brother Hakeem, through his strong, unflinching representation, and other black folk
Right.
in the UK, other black groups joined with him. So we're working on destroying that wall too.
Right.
Right.
Yes, sir.
We just have to be relentless against this enemy.
Right.
If I know, the minister said once, basically something like, you know, I don't think he said, I just want you to say what you believe, but he said something like, you can just speak what you know, right? In terms of him. Well, I know that this man changed my life.
Right. Right.
I know I've seen this man work longer for black people than I've been alive.
Yes, sir.
And I'm 62. I've seen this man defend black leaders, black youth. I've seen this man be disrespected by black political people and religious people. He's forgiven them. I've seen this man at the Million Man March create a huge platform, huge world gathering, world shaking event. And he allowed others that had nothing to do with the building of that event to
Right.
come and speak. Some even wanted to ask him, well, Farrakhan, are you going to raise money and what are you going to do with it? I'm sorry, I find that to be highly insulting.
Right.
But the minister didn't. So if you go online, if you Google something like Million Man March financial audit, you can get an audit of that march.
Right.
Right? They said minister, one of them at least, asked the minister, well, are you going to proselytize on that day? In my view, why shouldn't he?
Right.
But the minister said no. And so if you recall the day of the Million Man March, he said to our people, join a black organization.
Right.
Join the join the NAACP, join SCLC, join a church. Get some spiritual knowledge and work for the benefit of yourself, your family, your community, and your people. So he is a man who has a heart that is so expansive, who pardons and forgives over and over again.
Right.
But I think he's suffered too much. He's the suffering servant of an ignorant people.
Right.
But I think at a certain time, enough is enough, man.
Yes, sir.
I'm not talking about, of course, hurting anyone because we don't do that.
Right.
He wouldn't do that.
Right.
So
But he has a God that will.
There's a God that will.
And is doing it now.
Right. So we want to be those who represent him and stand strongly for him, the truth that he represents, the benefit that it brings to our people, the benefit actually that it brings to America, the benefit that it brings to the world. I traveled to Iran with this man. And I saw him sit in one of their leading kind of think tank institutions.
Right.
This man talked to those people, brother, in Tehran, in that conference room, like he was at 4855 South Woodlawn speaking to people from his dining room table.
Beautiful.
Didn't change a word.
Right.
Didn't change an expression. He said, we believe that the great Mahdi appeared in America in 1930. We know him as W.F. Muhammad. He said that to them. We believe that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad is fulfillment of Al-Masih or Messiah. He said that
Yes, sir.
in Iran. Didn't bite his tongue. He went to Mecca years ago and met with the scholars. They could not defeat what he offered. He
Right.
didn't come back and change his mind.
Mm.
So my point is he's traveled in Africa.
Right.
The late president, former president of Ghana, Jerry Rawlings, opened the country to him so he could impart wisdom. He's gone down into the Caribbean. He's gone wherever. He's gone to Australia,
Right.
where our people, the Aboriginals, suffer.
Mhm.
He has gone over nearly 196,940,000 square miles of the planet Earth. He has met with, sat with, defended our Native American brothers and sisters.
That's correct.
He has defended our Latino brothers and sisters as part of that original
That
family.
is correct.
We have a national Latino representative.
Right.
So you cannot put this man in some small-minded box.
Right.
Right.
How dare you? If
Right.
that's all he was, you wouldn't have to worry about it.
Right. Exactly.
You're worried because you know the truth.
Right.
You know that sharp sword that's in his tongue
Right.
destroys falsehood and gives
Right.
men and women courage.
Yes, sir.
And that's what you fear, so that we will no longer be your convenient tools and slaves.
Yes, sir.
Mhm.
But this is the day of our rise.
That's
So I
right.
say, let us rise up on the wings of truth that we know.
Yes, sir.
This man is I've seen him embrace people. When the government tried to, what they did, entrap Kabila Shabazz, the daughter of Malcolm X.
Right.
And they said that she was involved in a plot against the minister's life.
Exactly.
The minister spoke. See, this is the stuff they don't talk about.
Right.
They conveniently want you to forget.
Right.
But our, by Allah's grace, will never forget.
Yes, sir.
1995. She's charged in this quote unquote conspiracy that centers on a Jewish informant.
Right.
Federal government. They came to the minister's house, they being the FBI and the feds, and the minister told them the FBI has never been my friend.
Mm.
Initially, he said nothing. Then he sent his chief of staff out, chief of staff at the time, Brother Leonard Farrakhan Muhammad, out. And Brother Leonard delivered a powerful statement from the minister that nothing should happen to the family or the children of Malcolm, Brother Malcolm, and Dr. Betty Shabazz. And the minister spoke so forcefully. He said the FBI and the federal government has never been my friend.
Mm-hmm.
And he backed the government all the way down.
Sure
So much
did.
so that what was supposed to have been a fundraiser for Kabila Shabazz became a celebration and the beginning of reconciliation between Dr. Betty Shabazz and the Nation of Islam.
Right.
Dr. Shabazz spoke at the Million Man March.
Yes, sir.
That's right.
Dr. Shabazz spoke at the Million Man March. And there was a process of reconciliation ongoing. And the minister said at that time, we have never heard her story. She has never heard ours. But now what are we looking at, huh? Now we're looking at the two men, Abdul Aziz and the other brother, Khalil Islam, wrongly imprisoned for decades.
Right.
A couple of years ago, the state of New York paid out millions.
Right.
And now you've had further revelations. Now, recently, a few weeks ago, another brother came forward who was one of Brother Malcolm's followers in the Audubon ballroom. And he heard one of the officers say, "Is he one of ours?" as the crowd had caught one of the assassins.
Right.
and the cops are trying to figure out, is this one of ours that we need to save?
Right.
But this man was never questioned, though he's in many of the pictures, many of the videos
Right.
on that fateful day. So now the family of Brother Malcolm and Dr. Betty Shabazz, with Ben Crump as their lawyer, they have filed multi-million-dollar lawsuit against the federal government
Right.
to get to the truth. But the minister has said for decades, just open all the files. What are you afraid of? It's been, what,
That's
50
right.
years since the death of
Right. Open them up.
killing of Brother Malcolm. Huh? It's been 50 years since they killed
Right.
Brother Malcolm. What are they afraid of? What's in those files?
Right.
And Brother Nabaa, every Savior's Day, they would always, right before Savior's Day, come out with that. But since the revelation came out from, on the deathbed of the individual who was involved, they haven't said a word since then. They've been quiet. And so this is one of the examples of the lies being swallowed up by the earth.
Absolutely.
I know we're at the bottom of the hour, and I just had one more question, and I want to put this up here as I ask this question. It says one of the fears of the Jews that they had in the days of Jesus was his growing influence and pointing out the hypocrisy of the religious class. We see the same posture out of the Jewish community today, some of those who call themselves Jews, towards the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. Can you talk about this synagogue of Satan and the real fear? What is the real fear that they have coming from the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan?
Well, brother, thank you. I want to comment that from a little different view.
Yes, sir.
If you're on Twitter, or X now as it's called,
right,
I want you to look up Torah Jews, because this is a group of those who follow Moses. They condemn Zionism.
Mm-hmm.
Listen to what I'm saying. They condemn it as against the teachings of Moses and against that which is called Judaism. And every day almost, they are fighting. So we say that to say not all Jews agree that the minister is anything other than a matter of fact. Many of the Orthodox Jews see him as a very righteous man.
Right.
One gave him a silver tray that calls him the Messiah.
Right.
For that, and remember now, I heard the minister say once, you'll have to tell me how much time I got left, but I remember the minister said once, he said that when the Savior talked about the 85%, he didn't give it a color.
Right.
85% that don't know the truth, that believe in a mystery God, that don't understand the law of cause and effect. These are the blind that must be resurrected. He said, but if 85% of Jews back then actually knew what I was saying, they would agree, right?
Right.
They would agree. So those who know understand that this man is the upending of their power.
Right.
And they know him not just from the secular view, but they know him from the scriptural view.
Right.
They know him from all sides. And they are determined to keep their place. They don't want to be unmasked as those who do not fulfill the prophecy of the children of Israel. Because the belief that the Israelis, or those who call themselves Jews, many believe that their place in what's called Israel, which is really Palestine, is assured because they fulfill biblical prophecy, which they do not. It says right there in your Bible, when Jesus is confronted by the Jews and they engage in this conversation, they say, this is the Jewish people speaking. We have never been the slaves of any man.
Right.
When Begin and Yasser Arafat were in Europe, were in Egypt at a critical time trying to deal with Middle Eastern affairs.
Right.
Menachem Begin talked about the Jews having built these magnificent structures in Egypt. Yasser Arafat, we have no such occurrence in our history. So we are the fulfillment of prophecy. Fulfillment of prophecy.
Come on.
There was a sign, but the sign and its fulfillment are not the same. But we are those who have been in bondage for 400 years. We are the people of God's choice today. But these people have dined, lived deliciously. And they know that a day of judgment was coming.
Right.
They intend to fight God to the bitter end. I'm talking about the wicked ones.
Yes, sir.
Not those who are truly trying to follow Moses and the Torah,
Right.
but these other ones. And then you have others that are just being led by them because they are deceived by them.
Right.
And then you have others following them because they fear them, not
Right.
necessarily because they're right,
Right.
but they fear them and they don't necessarily have an adequate defense of the minister. But I think we got an adequate defense.
Most certainly.
I think all the things that he has said himself give us an offense and a defense and
Yes,
a definition where we can take this truth in a triumphant way so that we work to change lives and to make this world what Allah wants it to be and to do our part to try to free every person who has been locked and deceived so that we start with our people. Because the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said that our people had to be resurrected first. But as the minister said, if there's a group that's resurrected first, that kind of hints that there's a second group that also needs to be resurrected. So
Yes,
the
sir.
world needs to be resurrected. So those wicked ones that call themselves Jews but are not, they fear what is written in the Bible, that if we don't stop this man now, the whole world will come after him.
That's correct.
Beautiful. Yes, sir. Thank you, brother.
Thank
Thank you,
sir.
my brother, for coming on. We must have you on again.
Praise be to Allah.
Thank you for sharing so fluently. You can tell it's all up in you because it just comes out. All you gotta do is push a button, ask the question, and
We made our job easy tonight.
Comes out.
Allahu Akbar.
You one of them kind of
Allahu
speakers.
Akbar.
You one of them kind of presenters that you ain't got to ask a whole bunch of questions because when you start speaking, you start covering it all anyway before the question is even asked.
Look, we sit back and relax.
Well, we thank Allah. We thank Allah.
Yeah, I can sip on my juice. I can sip on my juice and gin, man, while you was
right, man. All right. You juice and ginger ale. I understand. I'm about to have mine.
But we definitely have to have you back, Brother Nabaa, in the future, because, you know, the final call is at the forefront, as they say, the tip of the spear, when it comes down to propagating the truth and defending the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan.
Yes.
We want to give a shout out to all the FOI and the MGT who are out there who pushed the Final Call newspaper. We don't want to end the program without, you know, sending them some love. And any last final words that you have, Brother Nabaa, and yourself, Brother Student Minister, and we'll go ahead and close on out.
Well,
Brother Nabaa, you have the last word first.
Well, thank you, brother. I just want to say thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak the truth and bear witness. I was blessed to see the minister at our family outing yesterday.
All praise due to Allah.
I just want to say, brothers and sisters, we are blessed people.
Yes, we are.
Let us embrace the blessing that Allah has given us.
Yes, sir.
Don't be afraid. Don't run away. Don't deny that which Allah, and a man with a 60-something year track record. The man ain't never did nothing against your interests.
That's right. That's right.
Why you so happy and eager to defend it the interests of your enemy, and you don't even know that's what you're doing.
Right.
But thank you so much to the brothers and sisters that take the final call, but in particular to that FOI. You are the soldiers of God.
Yes, sir.
You are the little messengers of God.
Yes, sir.
You are saviors raised to redeem and restore our people by his permission. You're doing a great work. I salute you. I thank you and say to you, keep it up. Let's double it. And let's send the devil into hell.
Yes,
All
sir.
praise
Praise be to Allah.
I would only say again, I am so thankful to Allah for the kind of people that are coming into the nation of the caliber of yourself, brother. I was in the nation prior to 1975, and I met some giants. But under the leadership of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, in terms of the talented, gifted, degreed, intelligent, able to seek out truth and do the kind of research necessary without being held and spoon-fed. There's a group of you all like yourself, Brother Nabaa, that have come to the nation and accepted your own. That is that group, as the minister said when he was dealing with the power tours, you are that group that are like the neck that connects it to the head. And without you all, if you don't have a neck, there's nothing for the head to sit on. And most certainly you all have connected that neck so that jugular vein can now be that close to all of us because of brothers and sisters like you. And the way you flowed today is proof positive that the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan has untied that mule and that colt.
Go ahead now.
And we are on our way.
We're on our way. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Allahu Akbar. All praises to God.
Allahu Akbar.
All praises.
All right.
Yes, sir.
And we just want to let everyone know who's watching to tune in every week at this same time, every Sunday at 7 p.m., where we'll be having more discussions. And this is an interactive program. So tune in and come on back and join us. And we'll go ahead and close it on out.
Thank you, sir.
You gotta have it. You gotta have it. You gotta have knowledge for life. You gotta have it. You gotta have it. You gotta have knowledge for life. You gotta have it. You gotta have it. You gotta have knowledge for life. You gotta have it. You gotta have it. You gotta have knowledge.